hello. Another episode of the Fearlessly Curious podcast. And I am extremely excited to have today with me, Seema Batavia. What is your mission in the world, Seema?
I have to say, Melissa, I absolutely love the way you phrased that question because it's a fairly common question, right? Like, what do you do in life? But I love the way you phrase what your mission is, because that is very different from your vocation, so to speak, because you can fulfill your mission in several different ways. But my mission is to help introverts get seen. This can be in the form of empowerment. This can be in the form of education. This can be in the form of finding their self-worth. This can be in the form of anything that is required for them to put themselves out there so that they can be seen by the world. And that's what brings me the most joy.
Right there. What brings you joy? I believe that when we are inspired or driven by what fills us up, that is true service. And I have definitely had the opportunity to see you in action, so to speak, on the incredible Instagram lives that I've seen you host and lead and facilitate. And that's where I first came to know you, fangirling you from in my own introverted way, because I don't think I've ever interacted with you in a live. I've just kind of sat back and watched and in awe and taken lots and lots of notes. So I'm going to dive straight. I'd love to know the why. Why do you feel called to help introverts show up?
To be honest, Melissa, I think I'm helping my past self. And I never realized that I was helping my past self until I was actually in the process of helping my past self. When I saw myself in the clients that I was helping, it became very apparent that the need was for my past self. And what's become very clear to me as this experience has unfolded of being visible in the online world and being able to make a name for yourself and being able to create something very substantial in this space is that introverts are the underdogs of the social world. And this is either an identity that they have adopted throughout their life, or it's been thrust upon them as well. It's a combination of both, because we grow up believing certain things about ourselves because we've heard certain things about ourselves growing up. This unfolds and shows up in the process of you wanting to be visible in the online space, whether we realize it or not. The beliefs that we hold and the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, about the world, about people around us, they can make or break your experience here. And to me, what became very apparent is I am doing this for myself on a daily basis. I'm an introvert myself, and I know firsthand what it is to feel unworthy, what it is to feel insecure, what it is to feel unseen, what it is to feel invalidated, all of the messy cocktail, right? And to actually deal with that and be able to show up with conviction, with confidence, and full belief that you deserve to be here is not a small endeavor. So I realized that the more I was doing this for myself, and the more I was helping these clients who are coming up, that this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to help my past self navigate this and fulfill that in this mission that I have. It just feels very rewarding.
I mean, this resonates with me on so many levels because I also identify as an introvert. And many people, when I tell them this, are like, what, you an introvert? Like you can get up on a stage and sing. So my history is I'm a singer-songwriter. And people have this perception, right, that if you're an introvert, and this is the thing about labels. As human beings, we want to belong. And we create these labels through our language so that we give ourselves a sense of belonging. But without awareness, of course, these labels become limits, right? And even with the label of introvert, like, how would you define an introvert?
That's a good question, Melissa, right? Because if you look at the textbook definition, it's just a personality type that recharges by spending time alone versus an extrovert who recharges with people around them. However, what happens as a result of being an introvert is when you're spending too much time alone, when you are isolated for a big chunk of your life, because that is what really recharges you. We spend too much time alone, which leads to shyness, which leads to anxiety, which leads to maybe some personality disorders or lack of mental wellness. There's a lot that comes up as a result of not having that social exposure. It doesn't mean you don't have the inherent competence or being good at what you do, or the confidence of, you being around people and you know how to conduct yourself. That's all there, but the conditioning isn't there. And because the conditioning isn't there, over time, interchangeably, society has thrust these terminologies upon us that, hey, if you're an introvert, you're a certain type of person, maybe you're shy, maybe you're nerdy, maybe you're geeky, maybe you're this kind of person. And a lot of times it is true, because we have been hidden for so long. But an introvert as a terminology, textbook definition, does not mean these things. It's just how you recharge.
I love that you brought that in really early in this conversation about the textbook definition that basically introverts recharge on their own, because there's a whole bunch of other labels which you just mentioned, right? Introverts are perceived as being shy, maybe quiet, geeky, nerdy. But the truth is, these labels are given in perspective to a society that is all about showing up loud, if you like, especially in the world of social media, right? You have to be seen. You have to be in a way where everybody's scrambling to be seen and heard. But I believe that with introverts, as introverts, we can show up in a way that is unique to us. So I can be quiet, be perceived as quiet, but it doesn't mean I'm not switched on. It doesn't mean that I'm not contributing to the conversation through my quietness, as in I'm taking in all that information and perhaps waiting to be invited for my opinion, waiting to be invited for my point of view, because I have a sense that if I just simply share my point of view, people who aren't ready for it aren't going to receive it. So in a way, I'm conserving my energy, waiting for that invitation. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with you, because I'm quite similar. And here's the thing about how people perceive us, right? It's that especially when you're younger, you're trying to make sense of who you are as a person. You don't quite have the understanding or the maturity yet. And that's the same for peers around you and the world around you at large. So they're constantly trying to slot you somewhere. They're like, is she talkative? Is she funny? What is she? What kind of person is she? Is she popular? Is she charming? Is she that one who grabs the attention, or does she sit quietly in a corner? What kind of person is she? So if you grow up a certain way where you don't even know you're an introvert yet, you've kind of realized these things about yourself that, okay, when I'm out, I'm a bit exhausted, but when I'm alone, I'm a bit more recharged. So let me spend more time alone. To you, this is just the way I am. I might be a bit strange, but this is who I am. But to other people, they're like, she's a really quiet kid. We wonder why. They haven't quite made sense of who you are yet, and they want to slot you somewhere. So you grow up with these labels that she's quiet, or she's, isolated, or she just spends a lot of time alone. And when it comes to conserving energy, you have full right to do it as you want to, because there's no one type of introvert. Yeah, we're a spectrum of individuals, right? So when we feel as if I would like to guard my energy and my conversations until I'm invited to speak up, to the other person, they might think that, okay, she just doesn't want to talk. She's a bit standoffish. Let's just not invite her at all. So there are these extreme polarities that start to show up. And that's what leads to a lot of misunderstanding, miscommunication, and internalized angst.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and that definitely affects mental health and well-being, when, especially as an introvert, and I'm speaking for myself right now, the pressures, as you mentioned, when we're growing up, when we're younger, trying to find a place where we belong, trying to fit in, right? The number of times that I've abandoned what felt right for me to fit in, to speak up, to whatever it might be, and the toll my health, my mental health, these belief systems, and how it made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I'm not loud enough, I'm not talkative enough, I don't know enough. It made me even question sometimes my own sanity, because I felt like I needed to fit in. And so for someone like you, with your mission, which is to create, not just educate people on what being an introvert on a spectrum can look and feel like, but be so inclusive with it. So what I understand is, not only are you creating a community and a support system for introverts, but it's so inclusive that you're also educating people who don't identify as an introvert on how to support introverts, so we can live in a more inclusive society and world. And I'm wondering, what was it that happened? Was there something in particular, or maybe a series of events that happened in your life that gave you this calling, that switched? Because I know that you were in a different industry, and I know that our listeners are going to want to know, like, the why, but also the how. How is it that you came to do what you do?
So at a certain point, Melissa, I became very proud of being an introvert. I think I probably identified this sometime in my early 20s, that, I think I have introverted tendencies, but I'm also a fairly confident person. I believe in myself. I know, I'm good at what I do. I did really well in school, in college, at work. So I know that the competent side of me is very, very driven. I'm a driven individual. But I also know that I have insecurities, that I'm a shy person, that I am very quiet, that I have social anxiety, that I have anxiety in general. So I have all of these things as well. And it took a lot of self-awareness for me to actually figure out that I'm not just a really weird person. Because I grew up believing this, okay?
Can I just pause that for 1 second? You said, I'm not just a really weird person. That means, by the way, listeners, the way I'm interpreting this is that Seema is fully owning the fact that she is a weird person and not just one. So I relate, because I am definitely very weird and proud.
And that connotation was negative for me for the longest time, because when I grew up, I had noticed a lot of patterns. I had noticed that I wasn't making very close friends, or that I wasn't always in the middle of the social group, or I wasn't always invited to things, or I wasn't having the social experiences that people were having around me. And for the longest time, Melissa, I thought that it was them. I thought it was all the people's fault. They're all being mean to me, that, they're not inviting me to things, and they don't understand me, and the world is awful, and woe is me, all these dark teen thoughts that you have. Yeah. But at some point, when the maturity kicked in and that self-awareness kicked in, I realized that I was the problem, not them, right? People can only know what we show them. So if you're showing up with a sullen, or a very standoffish, or, an attitude that says, please don't get close, they will not get close.
Yeah.
They will say, hey, it's okay. You keep your distance. We will not talk to you if you don't want us to. And that's internalized. So to me, at some point, I was like, okay, I'm a really weird person. There's something really wrong with me. Okay. But I also saw the evidence that, okay, I can pretty much achieve what I put my mind to. So I know that's there. So this became kind of like a juxtaposition of my personality and my competence, these two things. And my work became my identity for the longest time. My corporate job, my title, all of that became an identity, because I was excelling at work. I was really good at what I did. But there was this weird part of me, this person who might be a bit antisocial, or, she doesn't go to work lunches, and she doesn't, it's not her thing. And when I started my online journey, which is a whole other beast, which is conquering that fear and showing up online for myself, I started realizing just how lonely it was. And it was extremely taxing, emotionally very, very taxing. And I was helping other people, build their own brands. So my background is branding and marketing, for those who are listening. And I help other people build their personal brands, corporate brands. That's what my profession is. So I was trying to help individuals build their own brand online. And I started working with more and more people who were introverted. And I started seeing, the same personality types that I was, my weird self, that was showing up. And At this point, I'm extremely proud to be an introvert, and I've been proud to be an introvert for a long time. So I started pivoting towards that more, Melissa, because I'm just like, helping you get online is great, helping you build your brand is great, but it's a different beast when you are an introvert. It's just another level of achievement when you are an introvert and you have that courage to show up online and you're just showing up as your most authentic self. So the main reason that I made the switch was because I started seeing more and more of me come alive when I was working with these people. And it became such an endeavor for me to empower them and to provide a platform for them to say that it's okay to be an introvert. Because when I first started talking about it, no one was talking about being an introvert. The word introvert was kind of like taboo. This was a couple of years ago. Now it's everywhere. But when I first started talking about it, I got a lot of backlash as well, because this was into my online journey and when I had made a significant brand already. They're like, why just introverts? Why not extroverts? What about us?
I was going to ask you, what did that backlash look like? So the extroverts got offended, did they?
It was more like, why only them? Why nobody else? Why? So are you becoming elitist? Are you segregating people? What's going on here? Now, this is where the power of niching comes in, right? I am a huge advocate of niching because I feel like you can get very specific with the message. But when you have an audience already who like what you do and who follow what you do and they enjoy what you do, and you suddenly switch gears and say, hey, I'm no longer creating content for you. I'm creating content for only these types of people. It's right for them to take offense, right? Because they're like, we've been loyal to you. What about us? Why can't we follow you? But here's the thing. An introvert doesn't have a set personality type, right? I'm talking about insecurities. I'm talking about deep self-worth, deep-rooted issues that you haven't worked through yet, which a lot of extroverts work through as well. So to me, this mission shift was extremely necessary for what made me the happiest, because I started seeing a pattern of the type of person that I really looked forward to helping and the things that I really enjoyed talking about. So when I talked about introverts, my heart was like, oh, we're talking about introverts today. So to me, it just felt right in my heart and in my gut. So that was a necessary shift.
And I think what you said earlier about, this is something that you were doing for your former self. It's like you are now the person for others that you needed when you were going through this. And that is so beautiful. What a beautiful way to be called to this mission. You mentioned about anxiety earlier on, and I want to just check in if you would be comfortable to talk a little bit about that for our listeners. And if you're not, that's perfectly okay. I just want to check in with you. Are you okay for me to ask?
Sure. What would you want to ask? Please go for it.
I guess what are your anxieties, or have been your anxieties? Actually, I'm going to rephrase that, because you said you still have anxiety. And I have a perception about anxiety because a lot of my clients have anxiety too. And I'm very curious to know how your anxieties show up, and more importantly, how you navigate them. Because you mentioned you're an introvert, and in an earlier chat about showing up on camera. I mean, showing up online without the camera on is already one thing, but having the camera on is a whole different level. So I'll rephrase. I'll just recap that. What kind of anxieties are you facing? Do you still face, and how do you navigate them?
So for me, I feel like my anxieties are all encompassing. They're very deep-rooted fears that come from childhood. And if I sat to make a list of them, there'd be a laundry list. But some big ones are fear of failure, or fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, fear of success even. And a lot of these times when you're in this online space and you're setting out to say something or write something, there's this debilitating fear that makes you think, shit, what if I do this wrong? People are going to hate this. Like, people are going to march me on the streets and say, stop, we don't want this anymore. Every single time you're showing up, Melissa, it's a risk. And a lot of people, the more you do it, it's like a muscle. It does get a bit easier. But when the anxiety kicks in, it's more like you're doing it over and over and over again. It's like you've never done it before. So it feels like this tightness in the chest or tightness in the gut. And anxiety usually manifests in some kind of bodily sensation. There's some kind of fear that's happening. And that's how you identify that, okay, this is some kind of anxiety coming up. Mine's not extreme, fortunately, but it's prevalent enough for me to understand that, okay, this is something kicking in. Let's take a step back. So for me, what really works is really taking stock of what I'm doing. At this point, I know that there are a lot of people who are waiting to hear from me, and I don't want to let them down. So that's what keeps me motivated and keeps me going. But to those people who are just starting out and they do not have that evidence yet that your word has meaning and people are waiting to hear from you, is to have a very, very clearly defined foundation. The stronger your foundation is, and the more you believe in what you're saying, it becomes incrementally easier to start showing up, because it's coming from the heart. You're not just doing it for surface level vanity. You're not just doing it because, you're going to get the likes or the followers or anything that is not very definitive, right?
Yeah.
That really, really helps you kind of look at the evidence and say, okay, this is something that's truly me. I'm doing this for me. And of course, as far as exercises go, there's breathing exercises, self-care, and depending on the person that you are, there's ways to kind of calm yourself down from that anxiety. But for me, it's always to get back to reality and look at, why am I doing this? And why is it important? And just put the focus off from me and on the audience, saying, this is why I'm showing up. This is not for me. It's for my audience.
I love that. Leaning into service, the big why, what brought you here in the first place, and creating that foundation, like focusing on, the way I understood that in terms of foundation is focusing on what you absolutely know. I think that when, at least for me, when I fear failure, when I fear that I'm maybe I get this whole thing about, oh, you're a fraud. Someone's going to catch you out on something. And I'm like, catch you out on what? If I get caught out on something, there's a learning experience right there on two levels, right? Maybe I'm going to learn something I didn't know before. That doesn't make me wrong. That just makes me more knowledgeable now that somebody has informed me of something. And of course, now I can't remember the second point. The second point might have been, can't remember. It's gone. There you go. So right now I'm feeling anxiety because I'm like, oh, but I need to be perfect in the podcast.
No, you do not. And imposter syndrome is such a big one, Melissa. It's a really, really important one to bring up, because we feel as if we need some kind of merit to show up and speak our truth. And it's very funny, because says who?
Exactly.
Like, who's going to call you a fraud? Who is really telling you that you're not good enough to be here? And it's fascinating, because we put this on ourselves, and then it just really keeps us and becomes a barrier for us to show up.
Yeah. And I think also, in terms of what society puts out there, and we're part of society, it's the languaging as well. We talk about being the expert at something, mastery, being an authority of something. And I think what can happen is, if we take that so seriously that we take it to the point where I have to be perfect, right? But if we can lean into that, the self-empathy almost, and the softening of the fact that the minute you think you know it all, you actually know nothing. And that, as I mentioned earlier, if someone corrects you or gives you different type of information, that actually makes you a better person. It's what we choose to focus on. Do I focus on the fact that I should have known that, but who says I should have known that? I know what I know. I also don't know what I don't know. And part of being an expert or an authority in a subject area is the ability to be open to expanding your knowledge. You're an authority actually on your personal experience, as opposed to what information is out there for the general public. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely love that. I'm applauding here, Melissa. Being an expert on your personal experience. And I 100% agree, because you've been through what you've been through. No one else has gone through what you have. And I agree with what you've said about the labels of expert and mastery, and the internet's obsession with gurus and
yes.
YouTube University, so to speak. I understand that the chase for authority is high, and it is a very attractive chase of wanting to be the authority, but you can be the authority in your experience. You have lessons that you've learned from your past. You have things that you have, unpacked from your past, and there's things that you've learned that other people may not know. And we take our own experiences and our own wisdom for granted.
Yeah.
We think everybody knows what we know, but that is not true. You know something on a much greater level than someone else does, and that is what makes you valuable. But more than that, what really makes you attractive is the vulnerability, the ability to show up, fumble over your words if you have to, and just keep going, even if you know that it might invite people to say things, or even if it's going to lead to discussions or some kind of discourse and trolls and whatever shows up at your door. It's still your door, right?
Yes.
This is your home. And you have the ability to kind of stay behind your door and say, hey, I'm completely open and vulnerable here, but you don't get beyond a certain point. I see you, I accept you, but then it's up to you whether you're internalizing everything that's coming to you or whether you're just observing.
Yeah.
Because the winning and the magic is in the observation and the discernment. So when you are able to very objectively take a look at the reactions of people and the feedback of people of your work, and you're able to learn from it from a very humble point of view, from a student of life point of view,
Yes.
and being able to apply that to yourself if you want to, that's what makes people really, really invest in you as an individual. Because anyone who claims that they know everything and they're not open to discussions, they're not open to feedback, they're not open to anything, no vulnerability, they're just up there on their high horse or their pedestal. That's not what makes a community. That's not what really leads to a big group of people wanting to invest in you as a person. That's what the difference is between those who are able to be vulnerable and those who are not.
Yeah. So beautifully expressed. I so appreciate being in this space with you and learning from you right here. What a privilege to have you on the podcast. Once again, I'm so grateful that you're here, Seema. I would really love for everybody, the listeners, to know how, first of all, do they get to know more of your work? I mean, apart from the platform that you're most visible on, would that be Instagram?
Yes, that's my mothership,
Instagram.
Melissa. That's what I call
the mothership. Okay. And how would any listeners now who want to know more and perhaps want to come under your wing within your community, learn from you as a coach, what kind of offerings do you have? I mean, let's lay that on the table. Let's be really clear about that for everyone listening.
I love how straightforward you are with this, Melissa. That's amazing.
Yeah,
You're like, let's get down to business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, you're out there to serve introverts, right? I like to say me alongside you in my own way. And what are we here? We talked about, you mentioned community, how important it is for us to grow together, right?
Yes.
Learn and grow together and really live life authentically, as you mentioned, because our authority is our personal experience. So if we spend our entire lives trying to fit in and be like everybody else, then that unique way of living life that you have, that I have, that all the people are listening have, that wisdom is going to be lost if we don't walk our own path. So folks, you're listening, Seema is your person to go to support you and guide you and help you walk that path of you fully as an introvert, however being an introvert looks and feels like for you. So how do they get to you, and what do you have as a platter of offerings or one offer for everyone?
Absolutely love that, Melissa. Thank you for that question. So Instagram is my mothership. My username is Seema Batavia. One word, nothing in between. So you can always reach out to me there by message or a comment or however you'd like. And I also have a website, seemabatavia.com, that just has more information on it if you'd like to learn more about me. And currently I have two main offers, Melissa. One is an introductory course about your personal brand, which is a really good way to learn how to start showing up and what it takes to build a foundation of an online presence. And I always recommend people to go through it if they have the capacity to do that, because you get to know my teaching style, first of all, and how I think and how I teach. And also it'll give you more detail on how to get started with a personal brand. So that is a digital course. It's a self-paced course. The second offer that I have is one-to-one coaching. I work with individuals to help them overcome their insecurities and build their online presence and just build their personal brand as a whole. And this is the most rewarding way to work together, I feel, because the proximity that you have in working with someone over a period of time really takes you on a journey together and helps you make a difference, a transformation from the inside out. So I have a one-to-one program. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, I can send you information if you reach out to me. And I have one more offer upcoming, Melissa, which has not launched yet, but is in the works. I think you're the first person I'm telling in public.
Oh my God, exclusive right here, Fearlessly Curious podcast. You heard it first right here.
I cannot tell you more information. However, I will say to watch this space, because Melissa is the first person to know about this in the grander public. But my goal is to be able to serve more individuals in a capacity which is, let's say, not as personalized as one-to-one, but not solely a front-end digital course. So something in between there, so I'd be able to help more people. But watch this space. I hope to announce this in a couple of weeks, hopefully, once all my ducks are in a row.
That's very exciting. Do you have an email list or newsletter that people can sign up for, or do they literally just get on Instagram and get connected with you there in order to sort of get the first look on this new program?
Absolutely. So I have a free masterclass that you can sign on to, and that will immediately get you on my email list. If you just want to sign up on my email list, you can just do that on the website by itself. But watch the masterclass, it's free. Go watch it, enjoy it. It's going to give you some information. And if you would like to receive information about my upcoming program, just, let me know, or just get on my email list and I'll send you information as it launches.
Okay, great. And just two more questions just for myself, really. I'm curious that the first program that you mentioned, it was an online program. Is that a self-paced program?
It's self-paced.
It is self-paced.
It's a digital course, self-paced. It's on a platform with videos that you have to watch and some worksheets you have to complete. And it's a huge worksheet too. It's a mother load, so you're going to enjoy it.
So you're taking everybody on a journey, on a process for them to sort of get connected with their unique introvertness, so to speak, and how to show up.
So the course itself is more about building your online presence as a whole, because one thing people get lost in the process is where to get started. And this is a really good understanding of how the internet and personal branding actually works, what it takes for you to build an online presence. So if that is your goal, please go ahead and take a look at that. It's a it's a very valuable course. And I remember spending a lot of time on it when I first created it. So that'll be very valuable, but it is completely self-paced. It's a digital course. So just go at your own pace.
Okay. Awesome. The freedom of allowing that to fit into your own lifestyle and timing. And lastly, the one-on-one, is there a minimum period that people need to sign up with you in order to work one-on-one with you? Is it a 2 month? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? I'm curious how deep they get to go with you.
That's a really good question, Melissa. So the minimum commitment for a one-to-one is 3 months. Then there's an option for 6 months, option for a year. I've had clients who've signed on to all three when they start with 3 months and then they end up staying for a year, or they stay for a longer commitment. It is entirely up to you. And I think currently I also have slots open for one-to-one intensives, which is just one-time calls. If you just need guidance for one question, or you need clarity on one thing that we can talk about during one call, I think I have a few slots open for that. I'll just have to confirm with you, Melissa, because I have to check with my team. But that is a really good way to get started. Also, if you're not quite ready to commit to one-to-one yet, but you just want to understand what it would be like to work with me one-to-one, that's a good way to start as well, is just signing on to an intensive. But that's not
Okay.
open to the public, though. That's only like, you're getting exclusives here, Melissa. That's the funny thing.
I have a way, apparently. It's just
You
being
do.
curious.
Just
It's just being
extracting
curious.
all this out of me. It's really funny.
So I had asked, just as we wrap up, I had asked Seema, if you were a song, what song would you be? And I really went for it, because the first answer I got was anything deep, focused yet upbeat.
Yes.
And then I leaned in and I was like, yeah, but is there one specific song? And Seema was like, no.
This is so funny because I have never been a music person, so to speak. The only time I listen to music is when I'm working or if I'm focused. I never listen to music just for leisure. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I think I need to look into that. However, what I gravitate towards is like deep progressive music or like dance music or anything that's instrumental. Anything with lyrics, I don't gravitate towards as much unless I'm going out and it's just playing. But I found that it really helps me focus. It really helps me get centered and just focus on the task at hand. That's when I enjoy music a lot more. So when you ask that question, I'm like, this is a good question. I have no idea. I don't know what my favorite song is. So
watch this space, everybody. Watch this space. I love that. I love that you said, I don't really listen to music, for leisure, for leisure. I listen to music, when you're highly focused, when you need to focus and when you want to do deep work. And I love that you're intentional with that, because that's one of the things that I bring to my clients and to my work, which is music. I feel like it is such an undervalued resource, because people technically look at music as a form of entertainment and only entertainment. But it's such an incredible tool, like you're using it for focus, for deep work, and actually for helping us regulate our emotions. So when you mentioned earlier about, when I asked about anxiety and how you prepare and what tips you give your clients, I would also suggest to you the next time when you're preparing or when you have that anxiety show up, is also to lean into music. Because for me, what I understand for anxiety from my personal experience is when I'm way too much in my head. I'm not in my body anymore, right? Because I'm thinking about all the things that will probably never happen, or all the things that happened in the past that might happen now. And of course, if I focus on what went wrong before, I'm probably going to make those same mistakes because I'm so focused on them. So the way I get out of my head is I listen to music. That's why I asked you.
Oh, that's such an insightful way to look at it, Melissa, because the funny thing is, and I've said funny too much, the way we overthink is we overthink about the past or we overthink about the future. We never overthink about the present. So we're never in the present because we're so busy catastrophizing or thinking that what we've done might be repeated or we won't be able to succeed the way we want to. So we're overthinking front and back, but we're never really in the moment. So to use music for this is absolutely perfect to stay grounded and stay centered. And what I've heard lately, Melissa, is candles. I've been enjoying scented candles because for some reason on my last birthday, Melissa, everybody tried to give me very like therapeutic and very stress management focused
What are they
gifts.
trying to tell
I
you?
think I don't know, there's a pattern. Like I got a gift certificate for a massage. I got some incense and some candles and all this fun stuff. And I'm like, I might be putting something out there where people think that I need stress management. So basically candles have been helping. Scented candles, nice dim lit room. It really brings you back and just relaxes you.
Yeah. Getting into the senses, right? Yes. Sense of smell, hearing, touch. You talked about massage.
Yeah.
If you like to sing or hum, actually humming is a really good thing. But anyway, enough about that. I actually hate asking this question because I hate it when people ask me. I was going to ask you if there was one tip you would give people out there, what would it be? But I'm not going to say that, even though I just said that. Instead, I'm going to say, now I've put myself into a corner, an invisible corner. What would you like to leave everybody with today?
Oh, what a great way to end this. I would say, let's start believing. I would say that whatever thoughts you have in your head about yourself, they are changeable. Okay. And thoughts are not facts. The way I would really encourage everyone to think about the possibilities and capabilities and just what is possible for you out there, not just today, but a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, is anything that you believe is possible for you. And I say this as the most logical cynic out there. Okay, I'm someone who is highly, highly logical, and I'm always looking for evidence and looking for very tangible things. But I can assure you that the moment that you start believing and you start thinking that this is possible for you, things will start to shift. And I urge you to be kind to yourself and not put yourself in a box, because the box is as big as you make it, and the world is your oyster. You can do anything.
Wow, I felt that. Thank you.
But thank you so much for having me. I admire you and appreciate you so much.
You'll find all Seema's details in the notes for this podcast, whether you're listening to this or whether you're watching the video podcast. You know now that you don't need to walk this path alone.